majors. So let's talk about the different types of activities. And so as a college admissions counselor, I typically break down activities into two types. The first type is the on-campus type of activity, where you're considering school clubs, you're considering student government or sports teams, as well as participating in school-wide events. And so this type of activity is very important because universities want to see that you're an engaged member of your campus community, because your level of engagement in your high school community is often a good predictor of how engaged you're going to be as a college student on campus. And the next type of activity is the off-campus activities. So these types of activities include, community service volunteering, shadowing, camps, internships, research opportunities. So particularly going into your summers, you'll be looking at internships and research opportunities as you progress through your high school career. Additionally, you may be involved in religious or cultural institutions, and you may even be taking courses off campus. And so these activities are also important because they show your ability to be connected to the broader world and to your interests, be they academic or extracurricular. So let's talk a bit about on-campus activities. So on-campus activities are important because they're convenient and they're also low cost. So if you're interested in, let's say, science or math or engineering or the humanities, your ability to look around your school community and find opportunities to get involved are really going to be very crucial as you're building out your profile. Colleges really do look for involvement in high school communities, and they think about you in the context of your high school community to assess whether you'll be a positive contributor to their campus community. So early on in your high school career, you want to be familiarizing yourself with the types of activities available at your school. Now let's first talk about school clubs. So every student should be encouraged to join a school club. And you can typically find a school club list on your school's website. There's usually a student activities section where you can go in and see what the types of offerings are at your school. And so at the beginning of each school year or semester, there's usually a club day where you can look through some options and sign up for clubs. Now, what's a good club? And this is something that I typically get from a lot of, parents and students in elementary and middle school when it comes to thinking about their futures, and specifically their students' futures in high school. So a good club is a club that's relevant to a student's interests and goals. And by junior year, students should have at least 1 to 2 school clubs that relate to their prospective major. So if you're going to go into a STEM field, you probably want to join some sort of a science club or competition team. If you're going into the humanities, you might want to be joining a debate society or a history club or an art club. So think about your school clubs and school activities through the lens of what you potentially want to study in college. And now let's talk a bit about strong clubs by major. So for instance, if you're interested in let's say, well, let's first kind of think about, if you're interested in, kind of any major, you've got, speech and debate. And so why is speech and debate great? Because it helps you build strong analytical and communication skills. Oftentimes, if you're involved in speech and debate, you can parlay those skills into almost any kind of activity. Journalism and media is great as well for building up your communication and presentation skills. If you're really interested in student government and improving your campus community, you can join a school improvement club or some sort of student committee. And this may help address problems in your campus community. And then the last type of club is the human rights focused club. And as you're following the news and you're reading about changes occurring in society, your ability to take on a leadership role in addressing sort of personal identity issues or social justice issues is very important as you're packaging out yourself from a college admissions perspective. Now, what are weak clubs for any major? And some of the clubs that you're seeing here, may seem quite familiar. Typically, volunteer clubs like Key Club or Interact tend not to be very strong in terms of a student's profile because they're so common. And additionally, a lot of students join these clubs to build out their hours, from a volunteering perspective. So, some students come to me and say, "Hey, John, like I've got 50 hours with Key Club or 100 hours with Interact." And these types of clubs aren't really that strong when it comes to building out your profile. That said, you can certainly be involved in community service work in high school, either through an on-campus club or an off-campus organization. But Key Club and Interact, really aren't very strong. Then there's also National Honor Society. Now, for a lot of students who have strong academic profiles, having National Honor Society on your application is almost a given. So there isn't really much of a value add. Anything also focused on raising funds for international causes really isn't, spectacular. Now, you may be wondering why. And the thing is, colleges are really looking for people who are volunteering and fundraising for and in their local communities. So perhaps you have a connection to a foreign country through a religious organization or your cultural heritage. While that is great, in terms of what you can do for others, if you're looking at it from a college admissions perspective, those universities that you're interested in will have applicants from those regions. So those applicants are going to have a much stronger ability to make a local contribution in their areas of origin. So focus on local opportunities for service. And then, clubs that are typically focused on gaming or sports, clubs like badminton, usually aren't going to help you too much. Now, I give the caveat of students who are interested in things like esports or specifically want to go into video game design. These types of clubs may be beneficial, but by and large, if you're not interested in being a professional gamer or being in the gaming industry, being part of such a club doesn't really help your profile. Now, let's look at some clubs that are good for students based on their major. So if you're interested in biology, chemistry, or the life sciences, joining an Olympiad team like a biology Olympiad or a science Olympiad or a chemistry Olympiad can be great. Those sorts of competition clubs have a lot of credibility with universities. If there's a research club on campus that helps students find research internships or opportunities, those clubs are really great. And then if there are any clubs on campus that help students who are competing in science fairs, and science fairs in general are really great for STEM students looking to, showcase their research skills. And in particular, if you've got a school club that's focused on the Intel Fair or the Google Science Fair, those clubs are really beneficial for your profile. If you're interested in business, some of the clubs that I like are FBLA or DECA. These are competition clubs that are nationwide. And a lot of students that I've seen go through FBLA or DECA end up even pursuing careers in business. And so I like these clubs. I also like LaunchX. So this is a club comprised of students who are preparing for a very competitive summer entrepreneurship program. I actually had a large group of students this past year apply, and they're going to LaunchX. And LaunchX is run by MIT. And so it's a really great opportunity to develop your entrepreneurship skills. And there's also a final type of club, Beam clubs. And these are clubs where students work in teams to partner with local businesses and nonprofits and solve problems in their local communities. So these types of clubs are great for students interested in business. Now, if you're interested in engineering or computer science, you've got a wide array of clubs. Science Olympiad or any sort of Olympiad club is great. Robotics also is a very strong option for students interested in going into engineering or CS. There are lots of positions in robotics clubs where you can really showcase your coding skills, your design skills, your teamwork skills, your leadership skills. So these are great. And then also the USA Computing Olympiad is a great option for students. So the better you can do in a computing Olympiad, the better off you'll be from a college admissions perspective. I've also seen a lot of students get involved in hackathons. Hackathons are great because they showcase your problem solving skills, your teamwork skills. And so if you can't find a hackathon in your local area, you can always organize a hackathon at your school. There are lots of resources online to organize one. And so these types of clubs tend to be great for students looking at engineering and CS paths. Now, another question I typically get is, should students start a club at school? So starting a club is a great way to display leadership and passion. And the steps to start a club can vary school by school, but you'll typically find a lot of information on a school's website. And applications for new clubs are typically due at the end or beginning of a school year, depending on how your high school operates and how it manages student clubs. So starting a club can be a great option for you. And another question I should say I get is, how important is student government in college admissions? And I want to give this caveat. If you are a student and you're interested in student government, that's great. With that said, student government, and particularly having some sort of leadership role, is not a ticket to a top-ranked college. It's a very common type of activity, and these activities are typically quite time-consuming. However, you do have opportunities for problem solving and affecting change in your local community or your school community, particularly when it comes to issues of social justice. So your involvement may be rewarding, but you shouldn't view student government as somehow a way to get a leg up in college admissions. Now, another question I get is, should every student have a sport? So sports are a great way of differentiating yourself for some students, particularly if you're going to, let's say, compete in collegiate sports. That said, a lot of students are not going to be competing in college. And so by the time junior year rolls around, a lot of students end up rolling off of sports teams. So I say go and participate in sports if you're really passionate about athletics. Otherwise, I don't see much value. Keep in mind, though, that sports are a great way to boost your overall health and your self-esteem as a student. So participate where you can, but if you can't, that's okay. Don't worry. It's not make or break from a college admissions perspective. And then there are also other school-wide events that you could get involved in. And so many schools have programs that culminate in an event, such as like a TED Talk, freshman orientation, diversity awareness programs, and talent shows. In most cases, if you have an opportunity to participate, these are great. And if the event is meaningful to a student, these types of programs allow you to contribute something of value to your school community, as well as build on your strengths. So I would say go for school-wide events where you can. Now let's talk about off-campus activities. So these are activities that typically happen outside of school. They're a great way to help students grow and explore. And whether you're working at a homeless shelter, interning at a tech company, or pursuing some sort of outside interest, these demonstrate to colleges that you have a genuine interest in a specific major. And some students have little or no involvement in off-campus activities, while others spread themselves too thin. And so as you're going through your high school career, it's important to make adjustments as necessary until you get to college admissions season. So here are some health-related off-campus activities. So for instance, with hospitals, you can get involved in volunteering, particularly as a pre-med student. It's a great way to showcase leadership. There are also lots of health-oriented nonprofits like the American Heart Association, the American Diabetes Association. There's also the American Cancer Society, which has a lot of events called, like Relay for Life, where you can raise money to fight cancer. Medical explorer clubs like HOSA are also really great. So you can, found, let's say, a HOSA club in your local area. And so these clubs often, organize tours and give opportunities for students to build relationships with health professionals. So really great opportunity. And then there's also health professional shadowing. So your opportunity, your ability to get involved in shadowing a healthcare professional is really great, particularly for students applying to direct med programs or are eager to declare themselves as pre-med. Health professional shadowing can help you boost your profile. There are lots of business-related off-campus activities. So for instance, community groups and nonprofits like Junior Achievement can give students a lot of exposure to the business world. There are also thrift shops and nonprofits where you can develop your core business skills. And there are also entrepreneurial incubators. So like Junior Achievement, Blue Ocean, Catapult. These types of incubators really help tomorrow's entrepreneurs gain the skills they need as they're developing themselves and preparing for the next chapter of life. For those students interested in the sciences, getting involved in environmental organizations can be great. There are also lots of animal organizations that seek to advocate for dogs, for just wildlife in general. And so these types of activities are great for students interested in those paths. There are also internships with professors. And so there are structured internship programs out there. There's also the tried and true cold emailing approach. And so I have many students who have gone down that path and found internships with professors. Some of them have been able to write research papers, compete in science competitions using the research they've done. And so internships with professors are really great. There are also lots of students that volunteer at science museums or volunteer in an educational capacity as a mentor or teacher. And this is really a great way for students to pay it forward and give back to the next generation of STEM students. And so your ability to get involved in those types of community service activities is great. And I'd also say that community service is perhaps the most underrated aspect of the college application. The more you can get involved in community service, the better off you're going to be from an admissions standpoint. If you're interested in engineering, there are lots of community computer science programs and things like teaching tech to seniors, working with students who, let's say, are non-native speakers of English, working with folks in low-income areas is really great. Also STEM mentoring and teaching is really great. So your ability to mentor and teach students, particularly from lower income backgrounds, is great. As I mentioned before, there are lots of robotics competitions out there. So look into opportunities to showcase your robotic skills. And then, similar to what I mentioned before, hackathons, internships with professors are also really great ways to showcase your interest in engineering off campus. And then we've got, your community service related activities. And so I've said it before, I'll say it again, community service is the most underrated aspect of a college application, of a college applicant's profile. So nursing homes, soup kitchens, public libraries, special needs organizations, police and fire departments, homeless shelters, family shelters, all of these types of organizations are really great for boosting your community service profile. And also being of service to people is an incredibly attractive quality in the college admissions process. So really take advantage of these types of activities where possible. And so some other off-campus activities, you've got a lot of students who go down the government internship path. So sitting on school boards or county boards or youth commissions are really great. Religious or cultural youth groups are great, particularly when it's representing a religious group or cultural group that you are affiliated with. That's a phenomenal way of getting involved in a service type activity. Youth orchestras are great. There are lots of students who will join either state, national, or regional orchestras. They do take up a lot of a student's time, but they're great for developing yourself as a musician and as a member of a student community. Some students also participate in club sports outside of school. And so I would consider these types of activities in the same realm of just simply doing sports. And then part-time jobs. Now, a question that I get sometimes is, does it make sense to get a job in high school? And part-time jobs, particularly for students who are going to go off into the business world, you know, or even in engineering or CS, getting experience in a professional setting, whether it's working at McDonald's or coding for a summer in an office, like these types of experiences are great from a college admissions perspective. And for a lot of students that work with me, they're also differentiators because, you know, we don't always expect high school students that are aiming for top schools to have part-time jobs. And so a couple of years ago, for instance, I had a student who worked as a welder and another student who worked as an app developer at his local school district. And so these types of experiences are really great for setting you apart as a student. Now, it's also important to manage expectations. You know, I've put out all of these different types of opportunities. You know, it's important that as a younger student, which by that I mean, you know, students in elementary, middle school, and early high school, to get involved in a broad range of activities. And as you're going through your educational career, you want to narrow down the types of activities you want to be involved in. And by the time you reach the 10th grade, you should be involved in at least one activity that is related to your future major. And by the 11th grade, most of the activities that you are involved in should point toward your future major, because when you apply to college your senior year, you want to make sure that you have a strong narrative for the major you're going to declare on your application. Now, there's always the potential trap of overcommitment. Many students put a lot of pressure on themselves to do everything, and they focus on quantity over quality. And the key really is to focus on quality over quantity in terms of your academic achievements. And a starting question that you can utilize is, what is the most meaningful and relevant activity or a set of activities for me? And so for competitive students, you're trying to really like narrow down your areas of focus to sort of 2 or 3 core areas and not get involved in 10 plus activities where you have minimal involvement by the time you're a junior. So keep that in mind as you're going through your high school career. And so some final thoughts I have for students out there is, you know, work with a counselor to identify activities that match your interests. Here at Advanced Learning Academy, we have over 10 years experience working with students from a wide range of backgrounds. So we're here as a resource for you. Over time, focus on depth over breadth. And signature projects can often originate from pre-existing activities. So, you know, you may be involved in a coding class or a music program or an art program, and you can use that activity as a starting point for some of your own activities. And during lockdowns, really try to be creative, go virtual. I know we're coming out of these lockdowns, but you know, as you're probably following the news, we might enter some lockdowns this summer. And so be creative, go virtual across the board if you can. There are lots of virtual activities out there. And so I really encourage students to make the most of this time during the sort of final chapter of the COVID-19 related lockdowns. So that's what I had to say today in terms of what I had prepared. And I really want to take a moment and say thank you for folks who have joined us here on Facebook. I know I've got my assistant here, Jesse, who has been gathering some questions. And I want to see if we've got any questions. Jesse, have we got anything from the audience? Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So there are lots of online research programs out there. So some of the big ones are like Polygents, Lumiere Education, Horizon Inspires, Pioneer. So these are really great research opportunities where you can work with a research mentor virtually. There are also lots of online summer programs offered through universities like Columbia and Harvard, typically in the form of a summer immersion program or summer school. So you can get involved in those types of activities. There are also a lot of online volunteering opportunities through the Smithsonian, through the Red Cross. Lots of students start online clubs where they're doing, let's say, volunteer tutoring. So there are loads of things that you can be doing virtually. And I think that the number of opportunities that are going to be available that are virtual is going to grow exponentially in the years to come. Yeah, great question. So it's really a case by case basis where, for instance, let's say you've got a HOSA club or a Red Cross club at your school, and you have an opportunity to join that club or maybe found a similar club on campus. I would say if you can get into an existing organization and go for a leadership position, that's great. If you feel like you're going to hit a sort of a glass ceiling with that organization, I would encourage you to seriously consider starting your own organization. With that said, the top students usually are almost like serial founders or entrepreneurs when it comes to student organizations. So where possible, I would there isn't a club focused on a charity like Relay for Life. You could be the founder of that club on campus. Okay. Perfect. Well, I want to say thank you again for everyone who's joining us on Facebook. We're going to post this up on our social media sites, and so if you didn't get a chance to join us today, you can see the rebroadcast. And if you see this video and you want to reach out to us, please feel free to go to our website, visit us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. We are here to answer your questions, and we appreciate your time. So thank you everyone for joining, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.